Consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. For the record, my name is Jordan Redmond, representing District 3 in Kootenai County. I will declare a Rule 80, as I do have rental properties that participate as short-term rentals. House Bill 583 is legislation brought forth to clarify and strengthen protections for short-term rentals across our state. This bill ensures that property owners can utilize their homes for temporary lodging without undue regulation and burdens from local jurisdictions. This legislation amends Idaho Code and prevents counties and cities from enacting ordinances that effectively prohibit short-term rentals while allowing reasonable regulations focused solely on public health, safety, and welfare. Many cities in our state have unfortunately been interrupting Idaho Code by way of allowing them to excessively regulate and require undue regulation for homeowners who choose to rent their properties or outright forbidding them from the rental market. Many Idahoans depend on this supplemental income they receive from renting their homes, and they believe that they should be protected from private property rights. This bill also affirms short-term rentals remain subject to general ordinances applicable for all residential properties, including governing noise, parking, nuisances, curfews, traffic, etc. This measure strikes a balance between fostering economic opportunity for Idahoans, particularly in the tourist-dependent communities, while maintaining neighborhood integrity. This has been a bill that's been worked on for several years, and I do believe this strikes a good balance. Mr. Chairman, I would ask that Max Pond could pop up and walk through the bill with the committee.
Chairman Redmond, I think that's appropriate. Mr. Pond, please introduce yourself to the committee and make your presentation.
All right, Mr. Chairman and committee, thank you. As was said, Max Pond with the Idaho Realtors. Happy to be here on behalf of our organization in support of House Bill 583. I'm sorry to rehash a little bit of what the chairman said, but I'm going to go ahead and do that anyway. House Bill 583 provides clarity and understanding not only for property owners, but for local jurisdiction. Current law states that neither a county or a city may enact or enforce any ordinance that has the express or practical effect of prohibiting short-term rentals. Current law also states that short-term rentals are classified as residential land use for zoning purposes. So what does this mean? Well, from the perspective of my organization and many of the property owners that are here in support of House Bill 583, it means this, that because these properties are currently classified as residential use in current statute, they can't be subjected to the overreach we're seeing across the state, forcing them to meet commercial standards and not residential use standards. So again, the question, Mr. Chairman and committee, is this: at what point do these regulations become a practical prohibition on short-term rentals? Since the passage of our initial short-term rental statute in 2017, we've seen local jurisdictions testing the limits of the law all over the state. So when I say House Bill 583 provides clarity, here's what I mean. For local jurisdictions, this piece of legislation would allow them by ordinance to require an owner of a short-term rental to have a functioning smoke alarms in all sleeping areas. House Bill 583 would also allow a city or county by ordinance to require an owner of a short-term rental to have functioning fire extinguishers and carbon monoxide detectors on each floor. House Bill 583 allows a city or county by ordinance to require an owner of a short-term rental to have removable escape ladders in all sleeping areas with a window that is above the ground floor. This bill also clearly states that all short-term rental properties, their tenants are subject to all other county and city ordinances currently in place for noise, parking, nuisance, curfew, and traffic regulations. For property owners, House Bill 583 provides assurance, 100% assurance for property owners that local jurisdictions can't come in and compel you to remodel your house physically, meet commercial standards, or reconsider your investment altogether. Mr. Chairman and committee, House Bill 583 is a much needed piece of legislation that we urge you to send to the floor with a due pass recommendation. Mr. Chairman, I do know we have several people signed up to testify on this piece of legislation, So I'd like to stop there. I can certainly come back up and answer any questions if they arise.
Committee, we do have several people signed up to testify, but I'd entertain questions at this time. Representative Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Pond, just a quick, real easy one. The regulations that you just stated for short-term rentals, fire extinguishers, ladders, all that stuff, are long-term rentals subject to the same requirements currently?
Currently,
Mr. Pond.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Representative, currently they are not.
Thank you.
Committee, any other questions at this time? Okay, if not, we're going to start, you can try to respect the order in which everybody signed up to testify, so we'll start moving through testimony.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I believe I was supposed to turn over just a couple minutes to Ms. Melissa Radford, who's right up front here.
Okay, that'll be fine. Ms. Radford, if you want to come on up, introduce yourself to the committee and make your portion of the presentation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the House Business Committee. My name is Melissa Radford. My husband, Jeremy, and I live in Coeur d'Alene. I'm a neonatal nurse practitioner, and my husband is a general contractor. We moved here from Oregon specifically because of Idaho's strong commitment to the Constitution, individual rights, and welcoming communities. We purchased an old neglected house near downtown Coeur d'Alene and spent 2 years renovating it. It is now a beautiful home that we enjoy sharing with visitors. We decorate our home at Christmas time. We keep it clean, safe, and attractive year-round for our neighbors and guests. We love our neighbors and improve our neighborhood by making it look better than we found it and improving the aesthetics and property values of the area. We also provide an option for visitors to Coeur d'Alene who want to stay in a home, not a hotel room. Instead of the Idaho we expected, we've seen city leaders turn our inherent property rights into revocable government favors, privileges to be granted or stripped away at their whim. They weaponize regulations against vacation rental hosts like us, branding us as threats and invaders, not as neighbors who contribute to the economy. They use inflammatory, dehumanizing rhetoric to justify burdensome, unconstitutional rules and punitive taxes. We've heard heartbreaking stories from hosts across Idaho, from Island Park to McCall to Sandpoint to Lava Hot Springs, being scapegoated for failed housing policies, facing de facto bans that crush the American dream and our love of sharing our beautiful state with visitors. In Coeur d'Alene, a city leader openly called us invaders. Since 2023, the city has hired an out-of-state agency for 24/7 surveillance and a complaint hotline, turning neighbors into spies and treating us like perpetual suspects, presumed guilty without evidence. Yet real data shows disturbance rates around 1%. Claims of widespread problems are conjecture, not fact. Vague terms in the current state law, like health and safety and neighborhood integrity, are being manipulated to suspend our rights with no limiting principle. We've tried rational discussion at City Council statewide, only to face ordinance after ordinance that ignores equal protection, due process, and protection against warrantless searches. Homeowners have spent tens to hundreds of thousands on lawyers and lawsuits, but it's whack-a-mole. Strike down one unconstitutional regulation and 10 more appear. Even after the Idaho Supreme Court unanimously struck down Lava Hot Springs' selective bans last year in May, many cities have doubled down, defying the ruling and choosing lawfare over the law. They've proven they will not self-correct. I would not be standing here 3 years in a row if this wasn't an existential crisis, a violation of rights that only you can remedy. Please help pass House Bill 583, enact clear, unambiguous language that defends our fundamental property rights. We have the opportunity to make Idaho the first state in the nation to declare that the right to rent is not subject to the whims and biases of the loudest voices in City Hall, to make it unmistakable that cities and counties cannot violate property rights in the name of local control. Thank you for standing up for the principles that make Idaho great. Please support House Bill 583.
Thank you, Ms. Radford. Committee, any questions for Ms. Radford or the sponsor at this time? Okay, seeing none, let's move to testimony. I just want to make the room aware that we basically have a hard stop today at 3, so we're going to do the best we can to churn through these testimonies. So first up, I have Mr. Spencer Bailey. Spencer, if you would please come to the podium, introduce yourself, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Wonderful. Mr. Chairman, if you would, may I have would it be all right if I had the page pass out this handout to the chair?
That'd be fine. Paige, if we could do that.
Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for your time. For the record, my name is Spencer Bailey, and I'm the current president of the Idaho Vacation Rental Association, and am in support of House Bill 583. I want to acknowledge that not everyone who wishes to testify today will even have that chance. I'm here speaking on behalf of more than 600 vacation rental owners and properties across Idaho, the vast majority of them small local operators who simply couldn't be here in person. While I represent our organization, I'm also here personally as a Bear Lake County resident and an Idaho homeowner. My wife and I live full-time in St. Charles, Idaho, and we raise alpacas, and we're rooted there. Vacation rentals are not just a speculative investment for us. They're how we stay. Agritourism and rentals made it possible for us to keep our land, employ locals, and share the place we love without leaving. Over the last decade, I've operated a small portfolio of locally owned homes, and I've worked directly with neighbors, county commissioners, and law enforcement. I've seen the issues that get discussed, and I've seen how truly low occurrence they actually are. This issue isn't about choosing between communities and property rights. In Idaho, we expect both. To be clear, I believe strongly in both property rights and accountability. Please note, noise, trash, parking, and safety concerns are real, and existing laws already address them. What concerns us is when regulation shifts from addressing behavior to restricting lawful residential use, and that balance matters. I want to share one real example. I'm a 2-time cancer survivor, and because of that, I started a nonprofit called Cabins for Cancer. Local homeowners donate the use of their vacation rentals so families facing late-stage cancer can come together and enjoy Idaho at no cost. Just 2 weeks ago, a father battling leukemia came with his family, and children and grandchildren gathered together. He unfortunately passed away during that stay. His family told us that time together was one of the most meaningful and sacred moments of their lives. That home wasn't a party home, it wasn't harming a neighborhood, and it was serving a human purpose that hotels and hospitals simply can't. We're not asking for special treatment, we're just asking for measured, fair policy. I urge you to support House Bill 583, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Committee, any questions for Mr. Bailey? Seeing none, thank you. Oh, Mr. Veely, go ahead. Representative Veely.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Bailey, I appreciate our discussion we had Friday, and I will reiterate that this is a topic I'm really struggling with, but I really appreciate some of your stories. I wonder if you'd be willing to share the story of what you did with your sewer system, i.e. your septic system, for your unit that houses up to 82 guests.
Yes.
Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Representative Veely. We have a unit that supports large family gatherings in Bear Lake, and we pursued a septic system that was a 5-stage system when we built the home. The home was built to be a rental from the beginning. It wasn't built to be a rental, long-term rental or replacement for residents. And in doing so, we were able to, fabricate a system that, was not overbearing on the local area, on others' wells, things like that. It just came from being responsible to our neighbors.
Follow up, Representative Veely. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bailey, again, you put in a system, I can't remember if planning asked that you do that when you worked with the county planning?
Mr. Bailey.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Representative Veely. Yes, it was at request of the county that we would put in a system that could support that large of a group. So, yes.
Follow up again?
Another question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Representative Veely.
So also, one of the challenges that we're having is we're sitting there finding ways to fund counties. Some counties I know are charging short-term rentals a fee or something like that. The counties are somewhat burdened with the inability to come up with some of the funding that we have. I've been speaking with the fire district in Bear Lake County. They are running out of money. They don't have a way to fund it. We have, as being a Bear Laker, we have a lot of building going on in there, and they really don't have the funding coming in. Their fire district is basically losing equipment and things like that. And so we're kind of running out of ability to have a fire district. What would be in your mind, we've talked about a couple of these things, you don't want a fee to fund the county. Do you have another option that we could pursue?
Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Veely, I think there are a lot of paths and opportunities to help fund local municipalities and their needed infrastructure. I don't think that short-term rentals should be singled out as the way to fund those and to help spread that opportunity across all citizens of the county. But I think it's something that is warranted continued discussion, and I think that we do, definitely benefit from those services as well.
Another follow-up, Representative Veely?
No, thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Bailey, thank you for testimony.
Thank you.
Next up, we'll have a Julie Hill. Ms. Hill, if you can please come to the podium, introduce yourself, and you'll have 2 minutes to testify.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today. My name is Julie Hill, and I am from Lava Hot Springs, and I am here to urge you to vote yes on House Bill 583. At its core, this bill is about protecting private property rights, which are foundational principles in Idaho. House Bill 583 draws a clear and reasonable boundary between legitimate public safety concerns and unnecessary government overreach. Opponents argue that cities need local control. In theory, that sounds reasonable. In practice, however, many cities, including Lava Hot Springs, have abused that control in ways that directly harm property owners and guests. Across Idaho, we have seen cities enact ordinances that go far beyond health and safety. They imposed costly fire suppression systems, including requiring them in RV vehicles. Where there's no demonstrated risk. They limit permits arbitrarily, even when properties meet all objective standards. They set occupancy limits that have no basis in building codes or safety data. Some cities even require permits or licensing simply to use one's own private property. These rules are not minor inconveniences. They impose thousands of dollars in costs, delay projects indefinitely, and discourage investment in our communities. For small property owners, retirees, and working families who are the majority of short-term rental owners in Idaho, these ordinances can make lawful use of property financially impossible. House Bill 583 does not eliminate local government authority. It restores balance. It ensures that regulations are reasonable, justified, and respectful of individual rights. It creates consistency across the state so property owners are not subject to wildly different rules depending on city boundaries. Idaho has long stood for limited government, personal responsibility, and respect for private ownership. House Bill 583 upholds these values while allowing cities to protect legitimate public interests. I respectfully ask you to vote for House Bill 583 and stand with Idaho property owners.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Committee, any questions for Ms. Hill? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your time. Next up, we have Aaron Catt. Mr. Catt, if you'd please introduce yourself, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for your time. My name is Aaron Catt from Boise, Idaho, and I'm here in support of House Bill 583. My wife and I own a residential property management company here in Boise, and I'm a fifth-generation Idaho native. And for more than 20 years, I have helped Idaho property owners responsibly manage their homes and rental properties. Idaho has long valued private property rights, personal responsibility, and limited government intervention. Short-term rentals are a lawful and responsible expression of those rights. They allow Idaho families to adapt to real economic circumstances without surrendering ownership of their homes. Here's a situation that I encountered frequently in my work with Idaho homeowners. Last Friday, I met with Jessica, a Boise resident who bought and closed on her home on January 7th, 2026. Within weeks, her employer required her to work in the United Kingdom for at least 6 months. She can't sell her home and doesn't know exactly when she'll return, so operating her home as a short-term rental allows her to keep her property, meet her financial obligations, and return home when her assignment ends. This is what property use flexibility looks like in the real world. The people staying in these homes include travel nurses, micron contractors, construction workers, parents helping their children move in and out of Boise State, families using our hospitals, and employees on temporary assignments, just to name a few. They spend money locally, they support Idaho businesses, and they pay state and local taxes through the same lodging and sales tax systems as hotels. Short-term rentals are not corporate takeovers of neighborhoods. They're overwhelmingly owned by Idaho residents who live here, vote here, and care deeply about their communities. What House Bill 583 asks for is simple. It asks for short-term rentals to be treated the same as any other residential property or lawful rental use without proxy rules and regulations that create more problems than they solve. Local governments already have nuisance safety and enforcement tools to address bad actors. Broad restrictions on lawful property use are unnecessary and risk undermining fundamental property rights. Idaho's housing challenges are real, but they are driven by supply constraints, zoning limitation, construction costs, and not by responsible short-term rentals. I urge you to support House Bill 583 and to uphold the values of Idaho's values of fairness, property rights, and practical governance.
Thank you, Mr. Catt. Committee, any questions for Mr. Catt? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your time. Next up, I have a Christy Martin. Christy, Ms. Martin, if you'll please come to the podium, introduce yourself, and you'll have 2 minutes to testify.
Chairman, committee members, thank you for your time. My name is Christy Martin. I'm a wife, a homeschool mother of 4 here on a field trip today, and a small business owner. I'm here today because decisions about short-term rentals directly affect my family's future. We are not a stage in life where we can simply start over. What we've built through our small business is how we provide stability, security, and opportunity for our children. Property rights matter because our families, like mine, are the foundation of our future. I respectfully ask you support House Bill 583. My family's Airbnb is not a corporation, an investment fund, or a large-scale operation. It is a small family-run business that allows us to pay our mortgage, plan for the future, and provide long-term stability for our children. This is not extra income, it's essential income. Short-term rentals allow families like mine to build something sustainable without starting over every time the rules change. At this point in our lives, losing the stability would not mean pivoting to another opportunity. It would mean losing years of hard work. Our guests are not just vacationers. We host nurses, micron workers, construction crews, plumbers, electricians, and other trade professionals who come to our community. These are people building homes, repairing infrastructure, and keeping our economy running. Short-term rentals provide them with safe, practical housing that hotels often cannot. The impact also extends to local workers. Our business supports cleaners, maintenance professionals, landscapers, and other small service providers. When short-term rentals are restricted or eliminated, those workers lose reliable income also. These policies do not affect just property owners, they affect everyday working families. Short-term rentals also contribute fairly. We pay the same lodging and hotel tax as traditional hotels generate revenue for our city and state. The difference is that income stays local, supporting small businesses instead of flowing to large corporate hotel chains.
Ms. Martin, if you could please wrap up.
Thank you. Just please support House Bill 583. Property rights matter, especially to families building a future for their children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Committee, any questions for Ms. Martin? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your time. Oh, sorry. Representative Green.
Thank you, Chairman, and Ms. Martin, thanks for coming. And I just had a question, because I thought I heard you say it. Do you consider your property a business?
I only
Ms.
say
Martin.
business, thank you, because I'm also a property manager, so I have one home myself, and then I manage other properties on the side. But I do not consider it a small business, as most of my property that I manage, the owners own one home.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Appreciate your time. Next up, committee, we have Gregory Irvine. Mr. Irvine, if you'll please come to the podium, introduce yourself for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
My name is Gregory Irvin. I'm a full-time resident of McCall. I'm going to give a little different perspective than what you've heard thus far. Unfortunately, since I built my cabin in McCall 14 years ago, I've been the immediate neighbor of a large house used as a short-term rental. For many years, my wife and I have endured a stream of transient renters who have created nearly intolerable environment, including loud all-night parties, large gatherings, blocked streets, trespass, trash and litter, amplified music, uncontained bonfires, nudity, drunken brawls, and disrespect for me and towards me and my family. It's been like living next to a resort hotel. No, a fraternity house. The owner of the house is an out-of-county resident and until recently was unresponsive when I tried to lodge complaints about the behavior of his vacationing renters. The modest and common sense regulations adopted by McCall and Valley County have been the only thing creating any check on the chaos next door. If not for these regulations, my wife and I may have seriously considered moving from the home that we love. Now, House Bill 583 threatens to degrade local regulation of short-term rentals. Local measures to maintain quality of life are essential in any community. Those who live, work, and raise families in a place are certainly most qualified to understand what and make decisions about what is necessary to create the community they want and need. As you in the legislature well know, centralized decision-making often distorts the needs of the local. I urge you in the strongest possible terms to reject this ill-conceived bill. Please allow Idaho communities to maintain common sense regulation and licensing of these businesses that have invaded our residential neighborhoods and that risk seriously degrading the quality of life for the full-time residents. I believe, as I'm sure you do, in property rights. But the full-time residents of our communities should be afforded at least equal rights to peace, tranquility, and the enjoyment of their sacred homes.
Thank you,
for
Mr.
allowing me to
Irvin.
present.
I do see some questions from the committee here. We'll start with Representative Crane 13.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, so looking at the bill, I'm on page 2, starting on line 34 through 37. I share your concerns about noise, nuisance, curfew, nudity, etc. Does that section where it says all short-term rental properties along with their owners and tenants shall be subject to all other county and city ordinances and penalties that apply to non-short-term rental residence uses, including but not limited to noise, parking, nuisance, curfew, and traffic regulations? Since McCall's kind of been on the forefront of regulating some of this, would that cover some of your concerns that you have outlined to the committee today?
Mr. Irvin.
It would, except that my concern is that the regulations, because neighbors who live full-time in a neighborhood, as we all know, have respect for their neighbors most commonly. So we don't really have issues of that sort in an established neighborhood. When a short-term rental comes in, we have short-term people who, in a community like McCall, are there to have a good time. And they have no concern generally about the neighbors. And my experience has been that that more stringent regulation needs to happen in order to control that kind of behavior.
Representative Crane, follow-up?
Yes, thank you,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman. Sir, what regulation would you suggest then that would be in place to deal with noise? It sounded like that was kind of the concern, is the noise or the party atmosphere. What additional language would you like to see that's not in the legislation?
Well, there are
Mr.
many.
Irvin.
Yeah, excuse me, I'm sorry. There are many things that I would include, but one very important thing are occupancy limits. If a house has developed itself in such a way that it can hold 20, 25, 30 people, it's naturally going to attract a big crowd of party people. And that's exactly what I have next door to my home. Is a very large house that was remodeled to make more bedrooms and establish more space. When you have that many people in a place, by nature, it's going to become a party house. And I live in a residential neighborhood. We have wonderful neighbors, except for when the short-term renters are next door.
Another follow-up, Representative Crane, go ahead.
You're a great mind reader, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Same page, line 21, it says the maximum occupancy limits for short-term rentals do not exceed those of non-transient rental limits as contained in the International Building Codes and the Idaho Building Code Board. So I think it's got the occupancy limit issue addressed inside here. Just like if you were to hold a party at your house and you had 25 or 30 people, maybe at an outdoor party, that's not wrong. But if you had 25 people staying overnight in your home, that would be a problem. They can't do the same thing as I read this here. Does that not address your concern about occupancy limits?
Mr. Irvin.
I'm sorry. If I had a party at my home, in fact, I have had parties at my home, if I know there are going to be more people, I actually go door to door to my neighbors and say, we're having a party at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. There are going to be a few cars here, maybe more than usual. We may have some parking issues. If anything happens, of concern, I want to hear about it immediately. You have my cell number, call me right away. I want this to be, not a problem for you. When a short-term rental comes in, none of that happens.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Representative Green.
Thank you, Chairman, and sir, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate your perspective as I grapple with understanding much of this. You specifically mentioned McCall. McCall has put in place several current existing ordinances that may address some of your concerns. Since those have been put in place, have you seen a difference in your neighborhood?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin.
Yes, I have. Admittedly, they're not enforced as vigorously as I would have them enforced, but they have made a difference. Occupancy limits are enforced, for example, and that helps keep the chaos under control. I said, as a long-term resident of my neighborhood, I'd rather not have to deal with some of what I deal with, but I am willing to, make accommodation.
Follow-up, Representative Green?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I do
Go
have
ahead.
a follow-up. So I'm interested in understanding how occupancy limits are enforced. Can you expand on that? And before you go there, because I want to speak to some of the other things. We have law enforcement in place to be able to call should there be a noise or a party next door. You have city ordinances in place to address parking on the streets. The occupancy piece is the one I'm trying to wrap my head around. So can you tell me how that's enforced?
Mr. Irvin.
Excuse me. A lot of that has to do with how it's advertised in the short-term rental sites, Airbnb, VRBO, and so on. Occupancy limits are discussed and thereby enforced. Is it always perfect? Absolutely not, but at least it helps.
Okay, committee, I see no further questions. Mr. Irvin, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Committee, our next testimony is virtual. We're going to try to connect with a Christine Moon. Miss Moon, can you hear us? All right, we're going to pretend that's not a technical error and say that Miss Moon could not connect. So we're going to try now to connect with Josie Gray. Ms. Gray, thank you for appearing before the committee. You'll have 2 minutes to testify. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Josie Gray, and I'm a resident of Driggs, Idaho, and my husband and I own 2 properties. I'm here to strongly oppose H538. This bill goes far beyond protecting property rights. It strips Idaho cities and counties of nearly all the tools they need to manage these short-term rentals, even when local residents and elected officials clearly ask for help. It's important to remember that every homeowner and every long-term resident has property rights, not just the short-term rental owners. The rights of one group should not erase the rights of everyone else to live in a safe and stable neighborhood. I am not against short-term rentals. My husband and I own our home and 2 rental properties. One is a long-term rental for a local working couple, and the other provides a short-term rental or seasonal workforce housing. I understand the value of flexibility, and I support tourism. But I also see the real impacts on our community when STRs saturate entire neighborhoods. Last year, I was going door to door with a local elected official, and I saw just how dramatic those impacts have become. On many streets, a surprising number of homes in Driggs were dark and empty, used mostly as short-term rentals. It did not feel like a neighborhood anymore. We spoke with one elderly woman who moved into her subdivision when it was first built, full of families and neighbors who looked out for one another. She pointed to the homes on both sides of her and several across the street, nearly all now short-term renters. She told us that she often feels lonely, and sometimes unsafe because she never knows who will be next door and no longer has the comfort of familiar neighbors she can rely on. So local governments need the ability to protect residents like her. They need to respond to housing shortages, neighborhood stability, and quality of life concerns in ways that fit our community. This bill takes that ability away. It is overly restrictive, out of balance, and it undermines the very character of Idaho's small towns. For these reasons, I urge you to reject this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gray, for your testimony. Committee, any questions for Ms. Gray? Okay, seeing none, thank you for coming before the committee, and we'll move now to Daniel Murphy, who's here in person. Mr. Murphy, if you will please take your place at the podium, introduce yourself for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Sir, could I pass this around, please?
Paige, if we can get that.
Stop that clock. Come on. I got 2 minutes right here. Here we go. Daniel Murphy out of Boise. Thank you, Chairman and Committee. I am supportive of House Bill 583. Recently, House Bill 557, the Local Government Anti-Discrimination Bill, passed upstairs by a vote of 53 to 16. That bill is similar to what we have here before you today. Many local governments are wanting to put the squeeze on short-term rental business owners unfairly while giving long-term rental owners preferential treatment. That's discrimination. Some municipalities want these business owners to replace older home entities even though they properly passed code in the past. One example is one city instructed the fire department to conduct a fire safety inspection, during which an inspector would also look for other non-fire related violations, which goes against the Fourth Amendment. Renting a short-term rental is like renting a Uber, in that both the rider and the driver can give reviews. Short-term renters can give reviews for their stay as well as owners for their renters. So both sides are apt to provide a safe, clean environment, and renters maintain a responsible stay. My friend Jeremy and Melissa have worked on this legislation for 3 sessions now, trying to instill how theirs and other short-term rental business owners provide a valuable venue for local and out-of-state tourists who seek quality accommodations when visiting great areas around Idaho. Tourism is one of the most valuable lifebloods of the Idaho economy. Vacationers spend lots of money, yet sometimes cannot afford expensive hotels. Short-term rentals can provide a large space for larger families and friends. Property owners put their heart and soul into a great experience for the renters. They spend many waking hours maintaining and repairing, painting their properties. I would wager some on this committee might have rented a short-term rental in the past. I'd love to see House 583 up to the 3rd floor for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Committee, any questions for Mr. Murphy? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next up, we'll have Hillary Seacrest. Ms. Seacrest here. All right, I'm going to say no. And we're going to go now to Bruce Ard. Be a virtual testimony. Mayor Ard, thanks for appearing before the committee. If you'll please introduce yourself for the record, you'll have 2 minutes.
My name is Bruce Ard. I am a licensed realtor. I also own short-term rentals, but I'm also the mayor of Island Park. So I look at this thing from several different ways. Some of the problems that I have with this bill is that when it talks about, especially in Island Park, we have some vacation rentals that were set up as weekend cabins years and years ago. They've been purchased and now they're short-term rentals. And it talks about, you can't require sewer systems, but we have a lot of problems going on that they are polluting the water, and we have bad water to some of these cabins, and we have people that are sick and show up at the clinic here, and those things, this kind of locks that out, and that's a bad problem for everybody concerned. I went out and got grants. We're spending $10 million to fix one of the areas that's actually in the city because of problems like this. So there's a lot more to this than a lot of people realize. I'm not against short-term rentals. I own one, and I think when they're properly done. But part of the problem is just what was given in the testimony before, that they overload them, and there's too many people allowed into some of them, and the systems were never set up to be that way. Anyway, I see some problems with it. For that reason, I think that a better bill could be drafted, and this isn't really a good bill for any of at least the recreation, the portions of the state.
Thank you, Mayor Ard. Committee, any questions for Mr. Ard? Okay, seeing none, appreciate your time, Mayor Ard, and we're going to move now to another virtual testimony from Roger Miller. Mr. Miller, thank you for appearing before the committee. If you'll introduce yourself for the record, you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and this is not my house behind me on the screen. My name is Roger Millar. I live in McCall, Idaho. I'm speaking for myself, my family, and we're opposed to proposed legislation. We've owned our home in the Rio Vista neighborhood since 2005. Our neighborhood is over 60% second homes, with many of the second homeowners operating STRs out of their houses. We have experienced both owning and operating a short-term rental and living as a permanent resident in a neighborhood with a large number of STRs. When work sent me out of state, we operated an STR business in our home for 7 years. During the time we operated the business, the city went from having no regulations to their current regulations. These regulations were adopted in response to citizen concerns. As owners of the business, we did not find the regulations to be burdensome, much of which the city requires in the realm of health, safety, insurance, et cetera, is what a responsible business owner would have in place in the first place. And we found that the good neighbor provisions provided recourse short of calling the police when bad things happen, and sometimes they do. We strongly support the ability to regulate STRs at the local level with minimum state interference. Local regulation should address health, safety, and welfare requirements, many of which are unique to each locale. Local regulation should be allowed to contain good neighbor provisions. You are appropriately respectful of the rights of property owners, including myself, but with those rights come responsibilities. This is especially the case with a home-based business like an STR. I would ask you to also please consider the property rights and the health, safety, and welfare of homeowners who don't operate STR businesses but live in the community and get the pleasure of being their neighbors. Please also consider the health, safety, and welfare of the families who rent STRs. Shouldn't a parent be able to put their children to bed in a rented home knowing that they're safe? So please do not adopt legislation that restricts local government. Be happy to address any questions you might have, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Millar. Committee, any questions for this testifier? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Millar, appreciate it for your time. We'll go now to Brandon Owen, who is here in person. Mr. Owen, if you'll please come to the podium and introduce yourself for the record, you'll have 2 minutes.
My name is Brandon Owen. I live and work in Sun Valley, Ketchum, Idaho. Let this be a lesson in procrastination, because for an hour I get to listen to all the stories and let everything that I had to say fester. So pardon me for being nervous. I'm in support of HB 583. I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach. The Sun Valley Board of Realtors and my colleagues have been tired of hearing me talking about it. Did a study a year ago on the impacts to the economy the STRs have specific to Ketchum, Sun Valley. What that showed, first of all, is STRs now are providing 52% of the GDP in Blaine County, as opposed to the 48% from the other more transient hotels. So it's a massive part of the economy. The other thing that I hear all the time is that STRs have a negative impact on workforce housing. This isn't a unique problem in Ketchum-Sunvalley. I grew up there. I remember my parents having that conversation around the dinner table. Now I'm involved in it. Having said that, the same study showed that of the 90% of the STRs, those owners would not have their homes listed as a long-term rental, adding to the workforce housing. It would sit there. It would sit there open, empty, nothing. Because when you're an owner and you do a long-term rental, you are committing not to go to your vacation spot for the next year, 2 years, whatever it is. So it's not going to impact that. That's kind of that's why I'm in support of House Bill 583.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. Committee, any questions for Mr. Owen? Okay, seeing none, appreciate your time. Sure. We will move now to Heather Stainer. Is there a Heather Stainer here? Okay, I don't. I was like, oh, okay. I'm informed there's an overflow room, so if you're walking here, Heather, oh man. Points to Michelle for teaching the vice chairman.
Sorry about
Ms.
that.
Stainer, if you will introduce yourself for the record, you'll have 2 minutes.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Heather Stegner. I live here in Boise. I'm a Lewiston native and purchased a property in McCall about 4 years ago. Our home was built in 1965. I work for an organization that helps develop building codes, so I'm very familiar with the importance of the building codes and maintaining safety. I'm also aware that it's highly unusual to require our single-family home to come up to the current edition of the codes because we allow short-term rentals. Nevertheless, we installed egress windows in our below-grade bedrooms at a great cost and good faith to be in compliance. Because our home has 5 bedrooms, McCall's ordinance puts an additional burden on us if we wanted to rent at full capacity, which is not the 20 to 30 people that we're talking about. We're talking about 12 at max. We would be required to pay $3,200 to be in consideration for a conditional use permit or CUP, ask our neighbors for permission to use our home as an STR, and then appear before the city council for final permission. It is my understanding that they have allowed one of these CUPs. Nevertheless, it's a very small amount. These onerous requirements are clearly out of step with the legislative intent, but have unfortunately been upheld by a district court for lack of more specific statutory language. House Bill 583 would clarify the Idaho legislature's intent on requiring reasonable regulations of STRs and would alleviate the overly burdensome regulations we have experienced. I'm happy to comply with regulations. I do ask that they make sense, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stegner. Representative Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, for a question.
Go ahead.
Ms. Stegner, you mentioned code compliance, right? So electrician, I live in the code world, right? So under current state law, an older home is not required to be brought up to current code standard.
No.
Is that required for short-term rental?
Mrs. Stegner, go ahead.
Sorry, not used to this. Chairman, Representative, yes, that is part of what we experienced. Because 4 of the 5 bedrooms were below grade, in order to use those as bedrooms, we needed to put the egress windows in, which, like I said, we did.
Okay, committee, any other questions for Ms. Stegner? Seeing none, Ms. Stegner, appreciate your time. We'll move now to the next testifier, a Chris Cargill. This will be a virtual testimony. Mr. Cargill, if you'll please introduce yourself for the record, you'll have 2 minutes to testify.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Chris Cargill with Mountain States Policy Center. I thank you for the invitation to address you on this bill this afternoon. At its core, we believe this issue is about property rights and equal treatment under the law. The bill, as we have reviewed it, establishes a clear statewide standard by classifying short-term rentals as residential use and preventing local governments from imposing those de facto bans that have been referred to. This matters because the right to rent your own home, whether it be short-term or long-term, is a foundational part of ownership. Without that certainty, ownership itself becomes riskier, especially for middle-class families who may rely on that rental income. We understand that much of the opposition to this bill is from the resort communities, and we are told that short-term rentals are the primary cause of housing scarcity, but the claim does not hold up to scrutiny. Take McCall as an example. The mayor recently stated there are roughly 400 short-term rentals in a town with about 1,400 year-round occupied homes. What was left out is that McCall actually has over 4,100 total housing units. So short-term rentals account for about 10% of that stock. Meanwhile, more than half of all homes in McCall, around 2,400 units, are seasonal or second homes, often owned by folks who live out of area, and they're often left empty much of the year. In other words, there are roughly 6 times as many vacant vacation homes as there are short-term rentals. We accept that people have the right to leave their home empty for many months of the year if they choose. So why then have we decided that a middle-income family who needs rental income to afford a mortgage should not enjoy that same right? I want to also address the nuisance concerns, the noise, trash, parking, as Representative Green mentioned. Those are issues of behavior and not length of stay. Our review of this legislation indicates that it strengthens Idaho's tourism economy, protects middle-class homeowners, and ensures that enforcement is focused on real harms and not speculative ones. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cargill. Committee, any questions for Mr. Cargill? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the next testifier, a Joseph Hill here in person.
Thank you, Chairman Wheeler and committee members. So I'm going to have to slightly depart from where I was. I actually manage Gregory Irving's house, and we're a property management company in McCall, Idaho. And since we've taken over his particular property, it's improved for him. And we've heard that said otherwise. One of the things that we really do need to kind of consider is that as I've lived in McCall, I've actually had people that we've lived next to that were a nightmare. They were loud, they were obnoxious, and these are homeowners. And so even though that we've knocked on their door, we've had these kind of issues that were actually from long-term renters as well as other homeowners. So yes, we can have people that kind of get out of control, but I think the bigger control that we need to kind of look at is when we're sitting in some of the meetings that our homeowners are having to go through that $3,200 CUP, when some of the suggestions that they have to deconstruct their driveway. They have a 7-bedroom home, they're allowed 7 cars, and one of the suggestions that they have is they actually destroy part of their driveway. Now, we've also heard it where a bedroom is not going to be counted as a bedroom because it doesn't have a closet. Or they have too many bedrooms, and they said, you know what, you can actually get rid of some of your bedrooms by deconstructing, taking the doors off, removing the door jambs. And does that make any sense to you guys? I don't think so. Right now, as of today, I actually have to help one of our owners figure out how much it's going to cost for him to actually upgrade his water meter pit. He has a 7-bedroom home. It was perfectly built and adequate for 19 people. Right now, he can only rent 10 people. And in order to actually allow him to rent to 10 because he's over 7 with the CUP, they want to upgrade his meter pit. It's insane what they're asking us to do. I urge you guys to vote for the guardrails and House Bill 583.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Committee, any questions for Mr. Hill? Representative Green.
Thank you, Chairman. And Mr. Hill, thank you for coming. A couple years ago, this bill was before us, and the piece about McCall deconstructing a doorway, I thought that got resolved. Is it still the case that if you happen to have, say for instance, a 6-bedroom house and you want to rent it out as a short-term rental, and it may be, with 6 bedrooms you can sleep 12 people, but because that puts them over the threshold of 10 people, are they expected still to decommission one of those rooms, or I thought that got resolved. So can you help me understand that?
Mr. Hill.
So, Chairman Wheeler, Representative Green. They did discuss that, and they kind of backpedaled on that after we personally, sitting in there, said that's just absurd. So my wife and I actually kind of pulled them back, but these are the kind of thinking that they do. And I think that's kind of where what I really need to address and highlight is the attitude of what they're willing to do. So it's the same thing when they wanted to put in the fire suppression. So part of going down to 10, the quantity 10, for instance, was a very deliberate plan. And what they attempted to do was put in the fire code. So if you can bring it down to 10, at that point, when they were asking the fire chief to kind of figure out, well, what can we do to suppress some of the short-term rentals from actually going into the pool, they said, well, we could make them put in a fire sprinkler system. So between my wife and I, we managed to prevent them from actually deconstructing bedrooms, putting in the fire suppression systems, and same thing with the closet where they were demanding that, you can't use this as a bedroom because it doesn't have a closet. We fought back on that. So these are just the examples of what they're willing to do and how far they're willing to go. So we need guardrails to protect our rights.
Rep. Green, follow up.
So Chairman, just to clarify, make sure I've understood. So there is no longer this expectation that they have to deconstruct a room. They no longer have to put in the sprinkler systems. All of that has been resolved since. It's just yes or no.
Mr.
Yes.
Hill.
Correct.
Thank you. Chair or committee, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Hill, thank you for your time. Committee, I'm going to move to the couple final in-person testimonies that we have as we're drawing near the end of our available time. Is there an Arissa McRoberts available? Ms. McRoberts, if you'll please introduce yourself for the record, you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Arissa McRoberts. I serve on the Idaho Vacation Rental Association Board. I am a realtor in the state of Idaho. My husband and I own a property management company that manages short, mid, and long-term rentals throughout the Treasure Valley. Being entrenched in real estate, working with all types of residential properties every day, we see firsthand the short-term rentals are not fundamentally different from any other rental. They operate in the same neighborhoods. They use the same infrastructure, and they are subject to the same expectations around noise, parking, safety, and respect for neighbors. The length of stay alone does not change the nature of the property or the impacts on a community. I had prepared a statement, a longer statement about government overreach, community control, and it was well written. It was logical, and I still stand behind it. However, after this weekend, I just have an example that I wanted to give you. We gathered to mourn the loss of a deeply loved woman at a funeral, a family member of an honorable Idaho judge. And yet, in one of the most painful memories of their lives, there was nowhere for them to all simply be together. Instead, we were confined to a hotel room in a busy town, trying to grieve in the place that never stops moving. I want you to picture this for a moment. Hallways filled with strangers, families hiding their faces, their tear-streaked faces, children running door to door, no place for a grieving group. Dogs barking through walls, loud traffic and noises outside while hearts were breaking inside. And after a night of little sleep and little space to grieve, hoping for a little bit of rest before the funeral, we were being woke suddenly at 9 a.m. by pounding on the door, housekeeping, asking if we were ready to have the room cleaned, now rushing to dress and check out before 11. All I could think of was this. This is not how people should have to mourn. I found myself wishing that this family had a large home to rent for the weekend, a quiet home in a neighborhood where no one was rushing them along, a living room where tears didn't have to be hidden, a kitchen where food could be made, and a dining room where hands could be held and stories could be shared without interruption, a place where a compassionate host like me understood why they were there and would make considerable accommodations.
Ms. McRoberts, if you can please wrap up.
I'm sorry. They're not threats. They're not just transactions. They're sanctuaries. I just really ask for you to support this bill, not just as policymakers, but as people, because one day any of us may be that family searching for a moment of peace. Thank you for your understanding.
Thank you, Ms. McRoberts. Committee, any questions for Ms. McRoberts? Okay, seeing none, appreciate your time. Is Mr. Jonathan Wheatley available? Mr. Wheatley, if you will introduce yourself for the record, You'll have 2 minutes.
Chairman Wheeler, members of the committee, thanks for having me here today. My name is Jonathan Wheatley. I'm the Deputy Director with the Association of Idaho Cities. I'm here today in opposition of House Bill 583. Property rights are reciprocal. We've heard a lot about the rights of the property owners of these short-term rentals, and we've heard a little bit about those that are neighbors to them. But I think we're giving a lot of weight to those that are not necessarily living in the community day in and day out. And the neighbors have those rights, and they don't stop just at the end of the property line. They want to have that quiet use of their property and that reasonable expectation of safety. And when these homes have these high turnover rates, a lot can happen that tends to be reoccurring. You've got late night noise disturbances, parking and congestion. And while I admit that the bill does address and say that these can be enforced in the same general way that's applicable to all, there's no practical enforcement mechanism for these higher frequency occurring properties. You could potentially pick up the phone and call the police, and then they could come and cite the person, but you're taking valuable police time away. There's not a mechanism built into this bill that would allow for you to even contact the person who owns the property and say, hey, these are ongoing issues that we're seeing. As we also heard, there was an issue in McCall and things were not quite where they needed to be. The local process worked by his own admission. We're not requiring door jams, and every city's different. And I can't speak to the specifics of every single city, but there are a lot of things that need to be considered. And I'd say that those that are living day in and day out in the communities should have their rights heavily weighted. They're the ones that are asking for these types of restrictions, generally speaking, and to have their needs considered since they're the ones that are most impacted. So with that, I ask that you oppose House Bill 583, and I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wheatley. It looks like we have a question, Representative Harris.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wheatley. So let's say you live in an HOA, right? Can HOAs regulate short-term rentals?
Mr. Wheatley.
I am not here on behalf of the HOAs. To my knowledge, there was a law that was passed a few years back that would make it so that if you had CC&Rs that didn't restrict short-term rentals prior to a date certain, and I'm not totally sure when exactly that was, sometime within the 2020s, I would believe, then you couldn't implement restrictions on short-term rentals without the consent of the whole neighborhood. If they were in there beforehand, then you could, but that's outside the scope of what I'm here on.
Follow-up, Representative Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I bring up HOAs because the way you spoke and what you were saying, it sounds to me like cities essentially, if you live there full-time, they're wanting to create their own HOA within the city that regulates people that don't live there full-time. And that, to me, seems wrong. Just because you live in a city, wouldn't you have, if you live in a town full-time McCall, right? You live downtown McCall, you live there full-time, shouldn't you have the same property rights regardless of whether or not you own a vacation home or you don't?
Mr. Wheatley.
Chairman Wheeler, thank you. And I apologize for speaking out of turn earlier. I would say that there are rights that are competing, for sure. And if you do have that higher frequency of use, the person that's going to be most impacted is going to be the person that's living there day in and day out. I think that you've got the local process to address how these things are handled. Those that are living there can elect different members of city council to address various issues. And if they're unhappy with the outcomes as to how a certain city ordinance is playing out, then those that live there can vote those members out and pick somebody that is going to vote within their wishes.
Last one, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So city council, for example, right? If I own, like I live in Lewiston, right? If I bought a house for a vacation home that I wasn't going to use as a short-term rental, but I own that property in McCall, chances are I'm not going to get the same representation from the city council because I'm not there to vote for that council, correct? So that argument kind of loses water either way you go, right? As a property owner, we just have to have rights that are standard, right? Everybody has the same property rights, plain and simple. I can't be there to vote for a city council that's going to represent me as a property owner that wants a vacation home, just like, they might not get the representation they feel they want from their city council to protect them from people having parties. That's what this bill is doing, and I think we can all agree that this bill gets down to just the nuts and bolts of property rights and what we're going to allow, what we're not going to allow without having more burden on top of other people for property right versus property right. It's not really a question, sorry.
Or Mr. Wheatley, that's apparently not really a question, so we're going to go to Representative Monks.
Thank you, Chairman Wheeler. Thank you. I just want to clarify a comment that you'd made. You'd said that somebody who's living there more should have more property rights than somebody who's living there less. Is that the position of the cities?
Mr. Wheatley.
Chairman Wheeler, Representative Monks, my position is that those that are there in the community that are most impacted should have their weight or their needs weighted. And I would say that there should be some pretty heavy consideration to those that are impacted by the noise and by the frequent disturbances that do happen.
Follow-up, Representative Monks?
Just to follow up, I'm just making sure that you think property rights should be weighted differently for different people.
Mr. Wheatley.
Chairman Wheeler, Representative Monks, I do think that those that live in the community should have their needs addressed.
Okay, committee, seeing no further, oh, I'm sorry, Representative Green, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman, and hello. Thank you for representing the cities. I was actually glad to see somebody come up because I've been reviewing all of these ordinances, the ones in Lava, the one in McCall, trying to wrap my head around this. And I was here when this came before us for the first time. Since then, can you speak to what the association has done with some of these stakeholders to address some of these concerns? Because at the time this came forward the first time, we said, go back to the drawing table. There's a lot of concerns. This is a very tough decision. What have you guys done to mitigate some of the concerns that were brought up from some of these stakeholders in the last couple of years?
Mr. Wheatley.
Chairman Wheeler, Representative Green, thank you. I've been with the association now for a year, so I can't speak to what all happened prior to my time. I know that there have been trainings, there's been best practices that have been put out there, and general discussions around how you can navigate some of these issues that do have, wide-reaching impacts. So.
Representative Green, follow?
I'm going to let him off the hook since he's...
Okay. Mr. Wheatley, it appears that you are fully let off the hook. Appreciate your testimony. And if I could have Mr. Jeremy Chu. This will be our final in-person testimony. Mr. Chu, if you'll please introduce yourself to the committee, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Jeremy Chu with the law firm of Givens Persley, representing Airbnb. I just wanted to very quickly address some of the questions that were raised today and hopefully answer some additional questions if there are any additional questions. But very quickly, with respect to Representative Bealey's comments on the fire district, I think it's really from a public policy perspective, not the most appropriate to single out a particular section or entity or industry because there's an issue with respect to fire districts generally. There's really nothing in terms of studies or any kind of reports to suggest that that rentals, short-term rentals, have a disproportionate share of fire districts. Fire districts represent and serve everybody in the public. So really, if you're talking about requiring more fees or assessments as a way to support fire districts, it should be applied to everybody because it serves everybody. Likewise, if we're talking about noise ordinance or noise issues, as many of you folks know, I go to bed at 8 o'clock. I wake up at 5. I don't really care if it's a short-term rental person next to me or a group of college kids or an obnoxious neighbor. Noise is noise. And this bill allows local government to address that issue. Noise. Not the individual or the, again, particular sector of industry that is creating it. That's just the bottom line of what this bill does. If it's troublesome and bothersome with respect to the noise, then it should apply to everybody. And that's what this bill allows you to do. Lastly, Ms. Stegner's testimony with respect to occupancy is particularly compelling. I believe in McCall, you're talking about requesting a CUP for 10 people or more. With respect to the amount you have to charge, and just the process in itself. From
Mr. Chu, if you could wrap up, please.
That's right. Thank you for that. I apologize. The only other point is that most people actually have to hire a lawyer to get a conditional use permit, and that's untenable. With that, I'll open myself to questions.
Committee, any questions? Representative Cornelius.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for Mr. Chu. Since you represent the industry, can you tell me where there's vacation rentals that are managed by property management companies? If there were a complaint late evening, middle of the night, could they call property management, or do they have to count, if in Valley County, do they have to call the sheriff?
No.
Mr. Chu.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Cornelius, I believe both options are open. You can call the property management and let them know, but if it's an immediate need, you can call the police. I mean, that's really what the police do. If it's loud and if it's obnoxious, or people are, having these, crazy parties, the first thing you want to do is call the cops to stop them from doing that, and they are personally liable for that.
Okay. Representative Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chu, the additional fees that are paid by short-term rentals, the resort fee and whatever the other one is, do you know what those fees are used for within the community?
Mr. Chu.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harris, I do not. I believe it is within, currently, without this bill, within their discretion to charge whatever fee and apportion it to whatever program that they wish.
Follow-up, Representative Harris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chu, would you agree that it would be a good use to maybe bolster some of your first responding priorities within law enforcement and firefighting if you're going to be charging those fees?
Mr. Chu.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harris, I truly do, but I also believe that a wider, broader range of sector of the community should be supporting our firefighters.
Mr. Chu, if I could maybe just add to that question from Representative Harris, I think it's important that we make a distinction between fees or licensing fees that are being talked about in the context of this bill, and also the resort travel and convention tax, right, which currently counties collect. It comes to the Department of Commerce, and a pittance returns to counties to be used for marketing. They are constrained by statute and unable to use those for anything other than marketing, to Representative Harris's point. Is it fair to say that we can make a distinction between those somewhat differentiated fees that individual municipalities may be charging and the convention travel tax that Airbnbs may be subject to?
Mr. Chairman, I do believe so. And I don't know of what kind of restrictions cities have with respect to how they utilize those fees. I do know from a convention center perspective, a lot of that goes to tourism, encouraging, more, conventions here in Idaho and other things of that nature.
Representative Green.
Thank you, Chairman, and welcome. I want to say Jeremy, but I'll say Mr. Chu. I'm looking through this, and I appreciate your stakeholders and the efforts that they've undertaken to address some of these concerns. I do want to bring up something that I'm having consternation with, and that's line 43, and this is for everyone here, 63-1804. I do not like the addition of "and owners" added to this, and I'll speak to that. And then furthermore, you go down to line 28 to 31 on the last page. So page 3. Can you speak to this? Because I look and read this as I am now expected, my casual, non-commercial uses of my property, say in Garden Valley, when I hand it off to a friend for over the weekend and say, hey guys, pay $50 into the tip jar to help cover expenses. I read this, since you guys have added "and owners," that there's this expectation that I am to pay, whatever the resort tax fee is. I'm supposed to collect that. I'm supposed to pay for it. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because to me, it seems as though now you're infringing on my personal property rights.
Mr. Chu.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Green, thank you for that question. And for the record, I'm not a tax lawyer. It's extremely complicated. I do have a partner at the office that does a ton of tax, but I can tell you two things with respect to the language. Number one, on the second page, line 43, I believe it says or owner on the description of the statute below. Generally speaking, from a legal perspective, the courts do not interpret that section as a descriptive misnomer, or I'm sorry, a descriptive nomer to describe what's below the language. The substance is really below. So, and owner, I believe, was put in by LSO. The second thing is, with respect to the substance, the local governments have treated this as a service for sales tax purposes. Especially with resort cities, they get to get a little bit more with respect to their local sales tax, and they basically require everybody, whether or not they're on a platform, to remit those taxes. This language provides a little bit more clarity and let people know that regardless of whether or not you're on a platform, you still have to collect that tax for the local government. Frankly, it wasn't, again, our language. It was consensus language. We worked with other individuals. They wished to put that language in there. We accommodated them.
Follow-up, Representative Green.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a comment. Yes, I could see why some of your stakeholders would want that language put in there, because essentially it favors large marketplace because they're easy. They go and collect the tax for you. It encourages you to go to an Airbnb or VRBO. The lodging group, I could see why they'd want that in there too, because they feel that some of these folks are using their property and not paying the right taxes. I'm afraid it's just going to create some tax compliance obligations for our casual use of our property and for non-commercial uses.
Okay, I guess that's just a comment. Mr. Chu, thank you for your time. We're going to ask our good Chairman Redmond to return to the podium and close out his presentation.
Thank you, committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Just a couple quick comments as we wrap this up. House Bill 583 is part of a 3-year discussion. This has been through this committee. It's been on the other side of the rotunda, and this is just part of restoring private property rights back to our constituents here in the state of Idaho. As far as some of the concerns, the occupancy is spelled out in the bill, page 2, lines 21 to 23. Some of the uses for, ordinances, that's on the same page, 34 to 37. Those have been addressed within this bill, and that's why we believe it's a good compromise between regulation and free market and private property rights. As far as local control goes, I think the localist control is the property owner. And by infringing on their rights as the property owner, that is why we have this bill before you, trying to clarify that. We have all sworn an oath to the U.S. and the state constitution, and this is part of restoring those property rights to the constituents of the state of Idaho. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, Representative Crane 13.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at your interpretation of hard stop here, wanting to help you define hard stop at 3 o'clock. I would move to send House Bill 583 to the floor with a due pass recommendation. Also, Mr. Chairman, because there was referenced in the legislation itself items that I do sell, which is fire extinguishers and smoke detectors, I would like to declare Rule 80.
Representative Crane, your declaration of Rule 80 will be noted, as will your own interpretation of hard stop. Representative Crane 12.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a declaration of the Rule 80 as well. Thank you.
Okay, your declaration will be noted. Representative Green.
Chairman, I have a question, if that's appropriate.
Question is in order still.
All right, thank you. So I'm really wrapping. This is really hard. I could see where everybody stands on this and the concerns. So I'm reviewing Lava Hot Springs short-term rental ordinance, and I'm wondering if other cities are like this as well. But according to their ordinance, they actually have a cap, a citywide cap on short-term rental units. Does McCall, Coeur d'Alene, all these other communities, do they also have a cap, or is this special to Lava?
Chairman Redmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Green. I think there's a number of different cities that do have caps. I believe that Sandpoint has a cap, and I've heard of other cities throughout, but I don't know particularly each one's.
Representative Green, follow-up?
Oh, I have so many questions, but I'm not going to.
Representative Crane 13 thanks you for your discretion. Representative Cheatham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For a comment.
A comment is in order.
Thank you. You know, there's probably few in this building who are as vocal about local government and the ability to govern at home. But this time, I'm going to have to vote the other way because I think there are some local government violations that have become egregious. And they're not under control. They're not taking the hint of local property owners and business owners, and they're out of line, and I regret that it takes this body to bring them under control.
Thank you, Representative Cheatham. Representative Cannon.
Thank you. Just to, out of an abundance of caution, declare a potential conflict of interest under Rule 80 as an owner of a short-term rental. That's probably a big class, but I'm going to do that out of an abundance of caution.
Your declaration in an abundance of caution will be noted. Representative Green.
Since we're at it, I'll go ahead and unfortunately, I just inherited a property that puts me in that category, and I'm going to speak to it when the voting time comes, but I'm going to declare Rule 80.
Okay, your declaration will be noted. The Representative Veely.
A comment, if I may.
You may.
So certainly the cities have overreached and they've gone too far. I really dislike this issue. I wish this issue could have been solved without bringing it here. And I think it's rather unfortunate that we have to deal with it here. I feel there's a couple elements of this bill that overreaches. On the other side, I'm very concerned about sewers. I'm very concerned about very high density occupancy that can be going to a single 1,000 gallon septic tank and then down to like 60 feet of domes. What I think we will see into the future is that this committee will, in probably 3 or 4 years, have instances where somebody's going to have their domes that have overflowed because they've had 30 to 40 occupants through the summer, and they're going to show little streams of sewage that is flowing into somebody else's property. Or they're going to show that my well now has has nitrate issues or something like that. I would think that we could have some element, I would like to see some element of at least dealing with the sewage for an occupancy that way. I again think that in general this bill needs to happen, but there are some elements on occupancy and sewage which I think are critical. As far as looking at an area like Bear Lake, which quadruples their population in the summertime because of all the people that come in, there could be a reason that those entities which enable that to happen might bear some responsibility to help with the first responder issue. I don't know what that answer is, but we have to deal with that because I have a county right now that cannot deal with their first responder issues. And I'm just looking for some way to deal with that. If it's not through some sort of lodging tax or something like that, how else do we do with it? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Veely. Representative Birch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I will not be supporting the motion. I'd like to speak to that if I may.
Speaking to that is in order.
So I have a feeling this is probably going to be the single most difficult bill that I'm going to have to vote on because, and I reserve the right to cast a different vote on the floor of the House after hearing debate on the floor of the House and maybe talking to some people between here and then. But here's where I'm at. The most difficult decisions, I think, are when you're trying to balance the valid rights of two different parties that are in conflict with each other. And the balance that we have to strike here are the valid individual rights of a business owner with the rights of the individuals that live next to that business. And this clearly is a business issue because it's in the business community, not the local business committee, not the local government committee. My concern and I also will acknowledge that there are concerns about overreach in some local statutes and so forth. But the fact that we want to correct that doesn't automatically mean that this is the best way to correct it. And my specific concern with this bill is on page 1, line 16. where the protection of the integrity of residential neighborhoods is stricken. And to me, that is striking just a little too much of an imbalance here, and, we talk about there are protections with local ordinances, excuse me, but those protections are only as good as the ability for the local community to respond to them and respond to them in a timely manner. We talked about noise, and concern about noise. And the difference is that if you live next to a neighbor that's creating a lot of noise, yeah, you want to get that resolved, but you live next to them long term, and there are opportunities to resolve that. If that noise is coming from a short-term rental next door, every weekend is Groundhog Day with another group of people coming in there making noise again and parking and whatever that is. It's not the same. I'm also concerned about what this would do for property values. You're trying to sell your home, and next door, or maybe two, on either side of your house, are short-term rentals. People want to, my district is 12 square miles of wall-to-wall residential single-home subdivisions. Okay. Maybe there needs to be some differentiation between what a legislation does for that type of a community versus a resort community. But for this bill as it stands here, I just see that this puts too much of the thumb on the hands of someone who wants to turn a residential home in my district into a business, making it potentially turning a street into a quasi-business district, versus what might be the situation in a resort community. And the protections of local ordinances for noise and parking and trash and all that stuff are not guaranteed to actually be practically effective week after week after week. So for those reasons, at this point in time, I will not be supporting this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Birch. Representative Cornelius.
For a comment?
Comments still in order.
I hate to drag this out, Mr. Chairman and everybody in the committee. My comments are both for and against. We have property in McCall, outside of McCall, in more of a rural subdivision, and this has been an issue in that subdivision for years. We have 5-acre lots, and some of these homes are owned by, most of them are owned by Idaho people, but even those people have rented them out, and they have that authority, and I don't want to take that away from anybody. But the issue is, this is reality for people who live there or who are vacationing there. We love to go there to ski in the winter, to fly fish and do other things in the summer. And at times, there is a party next to our place. And if you go and complain, which we do, they shut down for a little bit, and the reality is they're back in 20, 30, 40 minutes. That's the reality. And that's really what we should be discussing, not just state issues, but what this is doing to local communities, not just my personal belief in how I want to rent my property, because I may want to rent my property and do the same thing, but I really am struggling with this because the reality is property management does not come out at 2 in the morning, just to be honest, because I've made those calls. The sheriff will come out when the sheriff can get around to it. And in Valley County at 2 in the morning, 1 in the morning, there's not many sheriffs. So I'm afraid we might overburden them, but I get the property rights issue. So I'm really struggling with this bill. So just a comment. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Representative Cornelius. Representative Green.
And thank you, Chairman. And I'm sorry, we did have a hard stop, but there's so much to this. I read through this, and I know that you guys have been at this for some time. In the proposed bill before us, line 12, page 2, it says, county or city by ordinance require owner of the short term to implement the following requirements, and it lists a number of requirements, all very good ones to address safety. Without a permitting process put in place, without some sort of city coordinating this effort, How can we be assured that all of these things are being implemented?
Chairman Redmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Green. This is part of state law, and so this is very easily, this should be part of what folks are doing if they own a short-term rental. This is similar to the taxing issue, right? Some of what we do is based on, this is part of the law, and we need compliance from this. If there's multiple complaints or something like that, I think you would see, because I think these cities probably know and track some of this, if you have multiple complaints from ordinances, they would see that maybe some of these don't comply.
Follow-up, Representative Green? No. Okay. Committee, seeing no further questions, Chairman Redmond, appreciate your presentation. I'll just take a minor privilege while he takes his seat to say I'm deeply grateful for the testimonies that have been brought this day. I share some of Representative Cheatham's concerns, Representative Cornelius' concerns, but this discussion has really brought me to the point of being supportive of the motion. I think that the bill is not striking the perfect balance, but is striking enough of a balance that it leaves local governments able to regulate the items that need to be regulated in this case. I might talk to my seatmate and we'll figure out that sewer thing later, but on that note, Representative Green.
Thank you, Chairman. I alluded to this earlier because I did want a moment to speak to this, and I have a really hard time with this. I inherited my father passed away last year, and I inherited his property in Garden Valley, and with that became a small mortgage, right? One that me and my sister may not necessarily be prepared to, and so we started looking into short-term rentals and figuring out a mechanism in which we can offset those costs. And I get it. I get where the cities are coming from. Wholeheartedly understand that there are concerns in some of these resort communities if they can sustain it. But at the same time, I also look at that as a personal property rights. Can I do with my property what is necessary for us to keep it in our family? Can I look to other avenues to ensure that I can keep it within my family? When I look to some of these ordinances put in place, Lava Hot Springs being one of them, restrictions on how many short-term rentals could be allowed in that community. I think it applies to Coeur d'Alene. Then I look into some of these other forced to install $100,000 worth of upgrades. As a property owner of a home that I just inherited, if that was the case for me and my sister trying to keep our property, I don't know how we could afford it. And then furthermore, a lot of people I know who are purchasing properties. I know somebody who purchased property in Sun Valley because they wanted to eventually retire there. They're working right now, but they purchased it in preparation for, and they rent it out accordingly because they want that to be their retirement home. So their forethought is, I'm going to make this investment because I'm going to move there. But if we had these same applications of percentage allowed, they wouldn't be able to do that. And therefore, their dream of retirement is going to be limited. Wholeheartedly agree with the cities. I wish you guys have actually just resolved this outside of this room and didn't put us in this predicament. We asked you years ago to go and do it. For that, I will be supporting this. I think that there's a balance that needs to be made. I'm feeling it. But then again, I'm not the only one. There's so many more families out there who are in the same position.
Okay. Committee, we have properly before us a motion to send House Bill 583 to the floor with a do-pass recommendation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Would you wish to be recorded? Okay. Motion carries. With that, I will return the gavel to our good Chairman Redmond.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Committee, that concludes our business. We stand adjourned.